In today's video, we have the latest rumors from around the league. We're starting with the Toronto Maple Leafs, looking at the William Nylander performance. Is that going to cause his contract to be way too rich for the Leafs? Also, do they have an issue with Tyler Bertuzzi? Will that lead to a trade? How do they get the best out of him, or what do they do to respond to the lack of supporting the performance here from their depth players? We also have some updates on the Ottawa Senators GM search. Do the Montreal Canadiens have an issue with their former first overall pick, Jerard Fagerberg? The development has not been good. The performance has not been great. What do they do? Could it lead to a trade, a demotion? What is best for his future? We also have some updates as well on several injured players. Kent Johnson, and more news on him, leading to the speculation around his future as well. And Ducks coach Greg Cronin has also been fined. And we have all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news and some rumors to take a look at today. First up, I want to talk about the Anaheim Ducks a little bit here. Their coach, Greg Cronin, has been fined $25,000 for unprofessional conduct dealing with the officials. Of course, on Monday night, he was kicked out of the game after arguing a call regarding goaltender interference that did not go his way. To be completely honest, I don't really blame him for being upset. It was a confusing call. Lots of people have said the reaction from Cronin wasn't really that bad. It wasn't anything like we've seen in other scenarios. I'm not sure, obviously, exactly what he said because I can't read lips per se, but it just looked to be a little bit more calm. Yes, he was mad. Yes, he was upset. I don't know exactly what his choice of words were, but it just didn't look all that intense compared to some of the things that we have seen in other scenarios in the history of the league that have led to nothing. So a little bit surprising, but he is fined $25,000 for that outcome. The Ducks also reassigned prospect Tristan Luneau to the San Diego Gulls on a conditioning loan because he hasn't played in a while. He last jumped into action on October the 21st, so he can go down on a conditioning assignment rather than actually being assigned to the minors, just to play a couple of games to get back into game shape to make sure that he's good to go in the NHL action. Several updates on several injury fronts, including the Ottawa Senators, who had their players dropping like flies last night. A couple of updates on some already injured players. Eric Brandstrom, who had a really scary situation a little while back against the Islanders, and Cal Clutterbuck, after taking a massive hit, has been dealing with a concussion. He was back on the ice today, skated for the first time in a non-contact jersey, but the fact that he's skating is promising. It's a step in the right direction. There's still no clear-cut timetable on when he'll return, but at least he's on the ice, so that's good news. Artem Zub had been skating, was in a non-contact jersey. A couple days ago, they were hopeful he might play against LA yesterday. Didn't happen. They gave him the day off, and now today they're saying that he's not doing as well. It had a bit of a setback, so he's going to need a little bit more time, and they don't know how long that's going to be because it's difficult to predict with concussions, but it's going to be at least another game or two before Zub can return. That's assuming symptoms, go away, right? They also lost Ridley Gregg and Mark Kastelic last night. We don't know exactly how long either are going to be out, but they will be out for at least a little bit. Gregg and Kastelic both were a lower body injury with their leg ankle area. Gregg had a awkward fall in the corner, and Kastelic went into the boards awkwardly. So we don't have exact timelines just yet, but shouldn't hopefully be too long, but we don't know exactly. They haven't officially announced it, but it looks like they're calling up Robbie Harventi and Zach McEwen. McEwen will be the toughness, the muscle that will replace what Kastelic brings in the fourth line. And Harventi had a real solid preseason for the Sens, so I think he'll get a good look at the 3C spot with Gregg being out of action for a bit, and he earned a call-up. So it's possible that they may not miss a beat in that regard, but they still need to play better anyways. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games, and in some of those games, they didn't generate nearly as much offense. So we'll see if Harventi can be a help in getting that going. The Rangers lost Adam Fox last night. He's going to be out for at least 4 weeks because they're placing him on long-term injured reserve. So that was a collision with Carolina Hurricanes centerman Sebastian Aho, and there's some Ranger fans calling it dirty. I see Jacob Trouba was chasing Aho all over the ice last night. To me, I've seen the play a bunch of times. I don't see anything dirty with that at all. Fox attempted to go around Aho. Aho was just as able to take the ice, and they did have an unfortunate collision. Fox is injured. Trouba was trying to get Aho to fight. And I understand when a guy goes down like that, how teams respond. In some ways, I'm glad to see the Rangers respond, because there's other teams that wouldn't have done it at all. But at the same time, you can send a message. You can let them know you're not going to tolerate stuff. But I don't think there was anything dirty on that. I really don't. I don't see there being any type of suspension or fine or anything coming from that. But it's unfortunate news for the New York Rangers, who are going to be without their top power play quarterback for at least 28 days or 10 games. So we'll see what happens there. Last night we also saw the Toronto Maple Leafs lose defenseman Timothy Liljegren. He went into the corner battling with Brad Marchand of the Bruins, and Marchand pulled what you would normally refer to as like a can opener, and Liljegren went hard and awkwardly into the boards. He is going to be out of action for a significant period of time. They haven't given us anything more definitive than significant, but it looked bad. He had to get helped off the ice and go down the tunnel right away. Of course, not returning to the game. No big surprise there. The more shocking part about this is that there was no penalty, but I can kind of see from the ref's perspective, maybe he couldn't see that Marchand's stick was in between Liljegren's legs, perhaps, but the ref did looked like a fairly good look at it. It was Wes McCauley, and he never called it. It's 100% it's a penalty. I don't think it's a suspendable play. You don't normally see suspensions for those types of plays or outcomes, but then unfortunately, it was a missed call. At the very least, the Leafs should have gotten a power play out of it, and they did not. But the sad part for me is that there was absolutely no response from the Leafs. They've brought in these different types of players in this offseason. You brought in Ryan Reeves, you brought in Max Domi, you brought in Tyler Bertuzzi, who are all known, like they're not all fighters. Reeves is more of the fighter. Domi's not afraid to fight. But they all play a gritty style of game. They're not afraid. Now, sometimes people think Max Domi is this real, even though he's not huge, he's not a big guy, but he's not not as aggressive and much of a hitter as some people make him out to be. But he is not afraid to get greasy and gritty, not afraid to drop the gloves, although you haven't really seen a whole lot of that with the Leafs here just yet. But there's no response. And as Marchand was going by the bench, kind of mouthing at them, there was a couple of words exchanged with Reeves, but Tyler Bertuzzi, who of course was teammates with Marchand and with the Bruins at the end of last season, he was laughing at him and just shaking his head. Bertuzzi sat for most of the third period, I think about almost half, and in the overtime period, because it did go to overtime. And they've tried Bertuzzi on the first line, second line, fourth line, and just nothing's happening. And really, I understand he got to know Marchand, probably became friends with him. That's all fine and dandy, but you're not friends on the ice when you're on opposite sides. I don't care who you are. Doesn't mean you have to go out and fight him. You may not want to fight your buddy. That's fine. But you can mouth at him and you can play him hard and physical. At the very least, to sit there and chuckle. To me, that's terrible. And nothing. What's the point of having Ryan Reeves on the bench if he's not going to try to get a response when your teammates are handled that way, especially when it's dirty? What's the point of having him there? It doesn't make any sense. Now, I've heard some people say that Sheldon Keefe teaches them that you don't fight back, that you hurt him on the scoreboard, get the power play, and hurt him that way. Okay, I get that. You want to hurt him on the scoreboard for sure, and you try to come out of any outcome like that with the power play if you can. You don't need to retaliate and get you a power play, and you can put a goal up. But holy jumping, it's nothing. That's shameful. Shameful. That's all I got to say on that. The Oilers are dealing with some injuries as well. Connor Brown's hurt right before he has to play one more game to have that $3.25 million bonus kick in. So I wonder what's up with that, if that's coincidental or not, but he's not playing. They did demote Philip Broberg as well, and they did recall Raphael Lavoie, who's coming up to get an opportunity to make his NHL debut. He had a good preseason, and we'll see if he can help the team out in a bottom six role. We also got some news out of Calgary. They're making some more changes. To me, it looks like, if I had to guess here, from Ryan Huska, the head coach, and GM Craig Conroy, I think they've kind of accepted the fact, after 6 straight losses, that the team's nowhere near what they thought it was. And we've heard lots of rumors about a Flames rebuild or retool And I absolutely think they're heading down that road. Of course, yesterday they had Jordan Oesterle on waivers. He didn't get picked up, so he cleared. They've assigned him to the minors. They also demoted Matt Coronado, the 2021 first-round pick, who had a good preseason, looked good early on, but has struggled a bit with a lot of his teammates, mind you, not just him by any means. And they've recalled Martin Pospisil and Nick DeSimone on defense. They had previously called up Connor Zary, who had a good look in his first game, scored a goal. And honestly, I think the Flames right now are trying to evaluate what they have in their organization. What do we have here? Do we have other players who could be a part of the solution long term or not? I think they're all, because usually like late in the season when teams are out of the playoffs, when you see them calling up rookies, give them a chance, I think they're already kind of taking that similar approach here, just trying to get guys looks to see what they can do at the NHL level to get a better feel for what they might have moving forward. And I wouldn't be shocked if we are going to start seeing some trades, but difficult to say exactly when that happens, but we'll see if the winning can pick up or the losing continues or what have you. But the Flames to me are certainly well going down that road here after what we've seen from them in the last few days. Now on Kent Johnson, we talked about the fact how he had been a healthy scratch, he'd been benched. Now he's been demoted to the minors. The Columbus Blue Jackets are certainly taking an interesting approach here. I mean, he had a good year last year, put up 40 points, had a pretty solid rookie campaign, looked to be well on his way to establish himself as not only being a regular NHL player, but being a regular NHL player with a huge potential to take a step forward to being, closer to being a superstar. This kid's very talented, but this year has been, I don't know if you're going to call it the sophomore jinx or what have you, but it could be a case of that. But at the end of the day, he's just not meshing with the coach. The coach hasn't been happy with his play. Like I said, he's been scratched. He's been benched. Now he's been demoted. So there's been some rumblings about, will he get to the point here soon that he wants a fresh start somewhere else? He changed agents not long ago, just in the last few days. Now under CAA, who obviously, like I said, has handled the request by guys like Dubois and Jones to get out of town on that team. So it made a few people nervous, but we'll see. They've recalled Chinnikov to take his place on the roster. So we'll see what the future of Kent Johnson is. Certainly interesting to say the least. Ottawa Senators. When it comes to their GM search, there's some more names popping up here from a few different local reporters. Bruce Garriock was suggesting in his latest hit that obviously where Michael Landauer was part of the Montreal Canadiens organization for a long time, was a part of the interviews and obviously giving feedback and suggestions when they went through their regime change after moving on from Marc Bergevin, when they hired Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes, that he feels that, that's part of the reason why he wants to have a two-prong approach here, have a president and a GM. He feels like it's a big enough job to have two obviously smart, qualified hockey guys at that head of the operations. And he wonders now if they might take a similar approach or really strongly consider some player agents who might be interested in jumping over to the NHL side of the team side and being a GM. So he mentioned a couple of names, one being Alan Walsh. Alan Walsh is a very interesting agent. He's one of the more outspoken agents on social media, has a podcast through the SDPN as well. You've probably seen it, Agent Provocateur. I honestly don't see Alan Walsh ever wanting to do that. Garriock made mention that Walsh has made comments before saying he'd never switch sides and will always remain being an agent. But he said he wondered if he could be persuaded. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'll never say never, but I highly doubt it. Also mentioned two other agents, including Newport Sports, Pat Morris and Craig Oster. Now, Pat Morris apparently has gotten some consideration or has been, I guess teams have talked to him. I don't know if he's ever actually interviewed, but he's one of those agents that has been speculated to maybe being interested in jumping over. Craig Oster would be extremely interesting. In case you don't know, Craig Oster is the uncle of Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, Brady Tkachuk is team captain. He'd be a very interesting GM. That would be very, very interesting. I don't know. I mean, they do have pretty lucrative agent business, so I don't know. But then again, when they were going through the process of doing this in Montreal, and we've seen other Other agents even switch to be AGMs, for example. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Lots of other names are out there, as we talked about before, including Peter Chiarelli, including maybe Jason Spezza. I think he's a little early in his career for this opportunity, but you never know. He hasn't been in Pittsburgh that long. I'm not sure that he'd really want to abort that mission with Dubas just yet. At some point, he'll probably want to move on to be a GM. I don't know if that time is yet, though. So we'll have to wait and see. Of course, Matthew Darsh's name has been out there as well, between connections to Andlauer and a couple of different options there. And of course, just having a really successful career and being considered one of the up-and-coming executives around the NHL. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. Now, do the Montreal Canadiens have a Jerard Slavkovsky problem? The former first overall pick a couple of years back has been struggling mightily. His rookie season last year didn't go overly great. There was a few flashes of goodness, but for the most part, there was a lot of up and down struggles, some injuries, and overall, you could make the argument that it wasn't overly successful. Now, it's not that unusual to see a first overall pick come in and start a little slow, or to have a season in your first year that's maybe leave some questions. You can look back on the last 20, 25 years and take a look at some of the first overall picks that started a little slow and turned out to be stars. So it's really last year, a lot of people were, give the guy a break. He just adjusted to North America, But now the sophomore season is not any better. It really has not at all. And there's a lot of people saying that they're getting Nail Yakupov vibes. Now, I think it might be a little early for that. Yakupov is actively known as probably one of the biggest draft busts in the last 20, 30 years. Now, like I said, I think it's early to put Slafkovsky in that category. But if you look at the sophomore season scoring rates, Slafkovsky, if of recent first overall picks like the last 20 years, he's at the very bottom. Like this year, he has 1 assist in 10 games. Not good. Only 10 shots on goal, so he's averaging 1 shot a game. He's -2. I know that plus-minus number is not the most favorite stat by a lot of people, but at the end of the day, that's where things are at. There's just not much production going on. Now, the team seems reluctant to send him to the minors, but a lot of people think he needs some time to step away from the NHL and just focus on his development for a while, whether that be demoted to the American Hockey League or even head back to Europe. Something. I don't know if going back to Europe is really the solution at this point. He's already acclimatized and adjusted to North America. A lot of people think the AHL might not be the best place for him. I know they recently asked Marty St. Louis, which I saw comments today saying that there's currently no plans to send him down. But it's a real issue here. He's just not progressing, not developing. Some people, I know I've seen comments from players who even played with him. There was one player who was over in Europe and played against him and said he's a big body, he's a big frame, that unfortunately a lot of the time frame of hockey that it was, you remember he went to the Olympics and had a real solid showing that really shot him up the draft spots to be considered for first overall, but there was also no NHL players there. People question his hockey IQ. It's just, we'll see what happens here. But Montreal is being a heavy conversation now. I see all kinds of Montreal media and national media picking up on this and saying, what should they do with Slafkovsky? We're into a second season now. The first season didn't go well. There was not much production. It got hurt, obviously, ended the season early. And now here we are. It just seems like he looks a bit lost and needs some development time. And what's the best way to handle that? I'm not sure playing in the NHL is really what the answer is, given that a lot of people just don't think, as of today, not saying it'll never happen, but as of today, he doesn't really seem to be an NHL player. So, unfortunately, if you take a look at Jeff Gorton's as the head of the hockey ops, and when he's been able to pick high like that, doesn't have a great track record. So I don't know. We'll see with Slafkovsky. Obviously, they made this pick, but I'm not saying he's not a good player. I was impressed with him as well at times, but there's certainly an argument to be made that a lot of what teams judged him on that pushed him so high up the rankings was really a short period of time in a couple of tournaments. So be curious to see what they do. But a lot of people are really shouting here from the rooftops to send him to the AHL. Be curious to see if they decide to do anything to help his development besides continue to play him in the NHL. Now in Toronto, I want to talk about that as well. Obviously, we talked a little bit earlier about the The lack of response, no response from Reeves, Bertuzzi smirking at Marchand and not doing anything about it. But do they have another problem here with Bertuzzi? And that's not just not to suggest his attitude's a problem, but like his production's a major issue. He's played in the top 6 in both lines. He's played on the 4th line, and he just can't seem to find a fit. He's not being productive at all. Yes, it's early, but he has not found any kind of a groove. I know when you get 10 games in, you had training camp, you had the preseason, and the Leafs as a whole are really struggling with secondary scoring. Their big guys are playing well. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander putting up good numbers. The supporting cast, for the most part, I'm not going to say everybody, but a large chunk of them are not pulling their weight. Domi and Bertuzzi. Like Domi's had a couple of moments, and it was one game he did really well there with Nyes. But Bertuzzi especially, he signed 1 year, and you take a look at William Nylander. Nylander's been on fire to start the season. He's got I think it's a record point streak now, 10 consecutive games to start the year. This guy is proving that he is just as valuable, just as productive as at least, John Tavares and Mitch Marner. A lot going into the campaign of the start of this season, a lot of people were like, oh, Nylander's not worth $10 million. Last year, look at what he did last year. Yeah, he had a good season, but no, he's more worth 8, 8.5, maybe 9. 9's probably pushing it. This guy's on an absolute tear. And to me, he's on a mission to show that he, at the very least, should be paid the same as Marner. There's a huge gap right now in their salaries. And a lot of people are saying this guy's playing like he's one of the best players in the world. If they're going to keep William Nylander, unless something drastic happens, because I don't see Nylander saying, yeah, you know what, I'm going to take a discount. Nylander's already taken a discount once, and a lot of people have said it, that they don't think he's going to want to do it again. Why does it always have to be Nylander who takes the discount? Why can't Matthews or Marner take a little off the top and leave some money for the rest of them? Right? So, there's some speculation, I heard Nick Kyprios on his show talking about that, would Nylander want to go elsewhere and be the guy, the top dog, and not play in Matthews and Marner's shadow? No matter how good he's doing, they still seem to get more of the focus, right? So, I don't know. It just makes me wonder, with Bertuzzi struggling the way he is and Nylander playing as well as he is, are they looking at this saying, if we want to keep Nylander, we're going to have to pay him the big bucks. He's going to have to get at least 10. 10's probably your new minimum. Probably closer to 11. He's going to be looking at what Marner's going to get and saying, you got to give me the same money as Marner at the very least. Matthews is a center. Typically scores more goals. He's been keeping up on them lately, but the fact that he's a centerman, they usually do get paid a little more, and it makes you wonder, right? Are they going to do that? Or I don't see them trading Nylander, but at the same time, can you imagine if he goes on to have another career season this year, because he's on pace to do it, and then walks for nothing because they can't afford to pay him his 10.5, 11 million or whatever he's going to get? That would be catastrophic for this franchise. Catastrophic. You take Nylander out of the mix. You have an aging Tavares, Domi and Bertuzzi struggling to fit in. This team could take a major step back without him. It really could happen. They think they have their goalie of the future in Joseph Woll. He's looking pretty good. Clearly, they need to make a few moves, I think, on the blue line before the deadline, but that's going to be a longer-term play. I don't know. Can they afford to keep Nylander? It's almost like, can you afford not to at this point because of the lack of scoring from the secondary scoring and the depth players? And all these extra guys you've brought in are not producing anything. So without your top 4, you'd really be up a creek right now. So, I don't know. It just makes me wonder if they would pull a move off here to move a guy like Bertuzzi who's not fitting in and maybe address that blue line. Because to me, Klingberg is also a bit of an issue. That wasn't a great move. That's not really working out so far. Maybe they go after a stronger blue liner and move. I don't know what they do, but it just makes you wonder. If they're going to end up having to pay Nylander what he wants to keep him, then they're not going to be able to afford to keep Bertuzzi too. Anyway, so maybe they make a move sooner than later. Well, it's early in the year and address the blue line and get some other stuff done. Just makes me wonder what they'll do here. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.